Greetings, dear friends. Operational situation at the front on the 2nd of March. Today, we have a lot of news, a lot of changes on the front. Well, let's start in order with the Kupiansk-Limansky section of the front. Kupianskoye direction, Avdeevka district. It means that during the counterattack, the APU managed to push back Russian troops on a front section up to 302 kilometers wide, to a depth of 1 kilometer. But at the same time, the enemy also carried out offensive actions and was able to advance in the direction of Kotlyárovka. To the south of Kotlyárovka, they managed to take part of a strong point on a section up to 2 to 14 kilometers wide, to a depth of 250 meters, and also to the south of the pike beam. They managed to take part of a forest belt up to 900 meters wide. The situation for yesterday, the situation for today looks like this. Despite this, the fighting persists, I would say more of a positional nature. Since we are talking about changes that have occurred over the past 5 or 6 days, and not something sudden. That is, the enemy carried out the main efforts, put more on expanding the control zone than on going deeper into Avdeevka itself, or to the dominant height beyond Avdeevka. Well, and also part of the mainstay, about which we said about a month ago, that they would try to take it, in order to continue further offensive actions, but already in the direction of Kotlyárovka. However, during this period, the pace of hostilities has significantly decreased, so we are seeing such changes already in the context of the weekly, roughly speaking, mark there. There was also an attempt on the part of the Russian troops to improve the tactical situation. In the Limansky direction of Terny-Vostokny-Ternov, however, the AFU conducted a counterattack here in the area of the round beam. The situation for yesterday, the situation for today. It was possible to throw back the Russian troops to a depth of up to 500 meters. Therefore, there is relative stabilization, even in this sector of the front, despite the fact that before we really observed a rather unpleasant picture, in the context of 2 months there, where the advance of even 3 months recorded the enemy's advance, but nevertheless there was some stabilization on the part of the APU. We will talk about this in more detail at the end, but now let's just make changes. We are moving to the Bakhmut direction of Bogdanovka. North of Bogdanovka, Russian troops launched an attack in the area of a T-shaped intersection. Here we have added clarifications where the attack was. It means that this clarification is actually already in the context of a month and a half, because we noted the counterattack of the armed forces of Ukraine, when it was possible to discard. Then again there was an attack by Russian troops, and actually the status remained on clarification in the gray zone. It was confirmed that it controls this area, so it is added in red. But at the same time, the attack was in the direction of, again, a T-shaped intersection. This is not a positional nature of the fighting. In other words, it is here that Russian troops are making further attempts to advance along the forest belts north of Bogdanovka, but we do not record any significant changes. At the same time, there is also pressure in the area of the Vyanovka railway station in the western direction. In the northern direction of the Sukraprayan, in the direction of Bogdanovka, no attempts were made by Russian troops. And now we turn to Ivanovsky. Yes, of course, the situation here is very, very tough, to put it mildly, difficult. So, according to the situation last night, we commented on the evening broadcast that the situation remains under clarification, because the high pace of hostilities remains. The first moment is fighting for the intersection of 2 streets, Sedovoye Street. They said that there is an enemy in this area, but it has not gained a foothold, so we do not note it. And similarly, there were attacks from Sedovoye Street to Shidno Street. And also in the post office area. We also talked about this with you, that there are battles going on, but the situation turned out to be a little worse in the context of the total of 24 hours than expected, and here, the Russian troops managed to advance in a section up to 252 kilometers wide to a depth of 115 kilometers, including positions west of Chernobyl. Yesterday we also commented on this point with you, that there are attacks to the west of the Chernobyl Garden Association. That is, they are trying to squeeze, and they manage to repel from the south. But, unfortunately, the result is that not all attacks were repulsed. Well, plus, we have said that the enemy has concentrated quite a large force, and he is actually attacking them now, continuing attacks. The situation is very, very difficult, because in addition to Chernobyl, there are attacks of Yuzhno-Ivanovsky. Do not forget from the Popovskaya tract in the south direction. There is also pressure in the direction of the road section T0504 to take it initially under partial fire control, but, taking into account what we already see, there is less than a kilometer to it. It's as if the enemy is focused on taking the area of the intersection about this area, already under full control. Well, although even now this is not the place where good logistics are already based on where the Russian troops have advanced. There was a lot of talk about the city of the yard clock, but I told you that Vector A will be changed to Ivanovsko. Why? The fact is that the Ivanovo forest makes it possible to catch on, gain a foothold, and taking into account the drones. I remember telling you about a month and a half or two ago, at the beginning of this year, that now a very big bet on the part of the Russian command will be made on Zelenka. Why? Because, and let the drones in, the APU is gradually gaining superiority in a number of areas, in the number of drones. Well, accordingly, in an open field, this is one thing, but between trees and even with a stretched grid, this is quite another. Therefore, a very big bet on Zelenka. And now we see that the enemy is moving exactly in the direction of the Ivanovo forest, which would later allow him to come close to the city of Chazan Yar, but no longer to its eastern part of the deciduous forest, from the Popovsky forest to the deciduous, but to press from the south. But as they say, we will look at it, because now there are very, very heavy battles. We will already proceed from the fact that we have such a difficult situation in the Bakhmut direction. And if we talk about the tactics chosen by the enemy, it also needs to be understood that there are ticks in the cat. Assault actions, those battles that were for the Kleshayevsky fortified area, for the dominant height, of course. The advance and a significant deterioration in logistics to Kleshivka, it simply will not allow it to be defended further. If the Russian troops can advance not only, as we say, in the direction of the city of Chaz, in the Yar, through the Ivanovo forest, after the capture of Ivanovo, but they are likely to change the vector to the south, which will give them the opportunity to naturally take control of a huge chunk of territory. This is a rather difficult situation. And in the end, we will talk a little more about this, as well as about counterattacks, and now I will repeat only on the front. We turn to the Avdeevka direction, and here, as you can see, in the context of not 24, but 48 hours, everything that we talked about 2 days ago is confirmed. Why is this important? I once said a month ago that my channel is regularly attacked, including the Telegram channel, not only YouTube. Comments, bots, orders and so on, that I'm not telling the truth, and so on and so on. Why? Because this channel of truth, you know it yourself, is guided not only by us in Ukraine, but also in Russia to receive the truth. And of course, they really don't want to show that they heard the truth, that is. But Burdick, in fact, after the counterattack, the situation is relatively stabilized. Despite the statements that it was taken on the 28th, 29th and 1st, today is already the 2nd. And no matter how it was taken for 3 days, because there is no what the statements were about. There is more with you here. Yes, we really don't have much information on the Avdeevka direction today, but this is actually a good thing. Perhaps this is due to what the official statements of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine are about now, the downing of aviation aircraft. Perhaps this is due to the decline in the activity of tactical aviation, but as soon as we saw this decline in tactical aviation, we immediately observe a completely different picture on the battlefield. That is, indeed, they changed the course of events with the bombs, but the frontline air defense also works. Do not forget as much as possible. Because the enemy also published footage of him hitting our frontline air defense. You have to understand that you can't just tighten up the air defense and think that it will work there. No, they have a number of drones that are capable of hitting, and at long enough distances. There are about 70 to 90 kilometers of modified latest drones to fly, so not everything is as good as we would like. This also needs to be taken into account. Moving on. Kharkiv direction. There are two changes here. First, Krasnogorovka does not conduct new assault operations by Russian troops, but at the same time, the auto vector, which we talked about, is more likely in the direction of Stavki. It is being implemented here, and conducts further assault operations, and was able to advance on a front section up to 180 meters wide, to a depth of 250 meters. This is the northwest from Mariinka. At the same time, the suburban village of Harvest, along with its fortified area, located south of the Georgievsky Stavka, came under the control of the enemy. Here it turned out that the enemy was advancing on a front line up to 200 meters wide, the width of the village itself, to a depth of 950 meters. Quite a significant advance and fortification, the capture of the fortified area, which was located in a dacha village. But this is not the best news, of course, because it is there that the enemy will now pull up their forces. Accordingly, in order to increase the pressure on Georgievka herself. It's a difficult situation, very, very difficult, and in general, it must be said that the action of the Russian military command is quite strange in this sector of the front. Based on Novomikhailivka, victory, the vector of attacks they are undertaking, the same Krasnogorovka, the forces they used, and even on the 3rd Assault Brigade, well, it would be clear that it is not enough. First of all, first in terms of numbers on the city itself, and secondly, on the 3rd Assault. Well, actually there was an attack. At the same time, they have a number of difficulties in the victory area, which we just talked about yesterday, where there was an attempt to move south of the farm, but it was reflected, so no changes were recorded. Therefore, it would be more logical for them to align the front line, but no. Well, here we will, as they say, look. In any case, as it says, they have enough reserves to carry out such large-scale attacks on the entire front. Therefore, this should also not be ignored in any case. For Novomikhailivka, we have added small minimal clarifications. So in the area of the industrial zone, one of the farms still falls into the red zone. But this is a clarification to what we noted with you yesterday. And the area of the dried-up riverbed is also a little north of it. These are the positions controlled by the enemy now. The situation yesterday, the situation for today. But again, this is a greater clarification of exactly what happened yesterday. Naturally, the fact that Russian troops have advanced and occupied the industrial zone now, what we have been talking about for a very long time before, will pull their forces from the south in order to increase pressure. Most likely, they will try, so to speak, to occupy a small triangle about this area, pressure on it, after which they will move. They will try to storm the central part of the settlement. Because the defensive lines were also prepared to move from the south to the fact that it could be here, that it is necessary to attack with a wide coverage, which is what the enemy is aiming at now. Well, again, the support of tactical aviation has decreased a little for them. Therefore, we will look, but the situation can no longer be said to be the same as it was before. It is very, very heavy in fact, and also because of the location of Novomikhailivka itself, with its river north of the settlement, with its cascade of stakes, respectively, the logistics that work here, and with the fact that there are enemy forces to the north. Yes, it is possible to restrain him, not allowing him to move south of victory, not allowing him to move on the Novomikhailivka-Marinka road section, where the fortified area is located. But still the enemy is concentrated as a whole, as you can see, large forces that allow him to carry out a number of attacks. Although not quite, sometimes these attacks are understandable to the actions of the command. But in any case, it's better for us than they would have attacked the concentration. We do not record any changes in the work on the Zaporozhye section of the front, and we do not record any changes in the markets either.